Hello, everyone, once again. The following message is going to include some very personal details in my life, and it's being delivered for the purpose of hopefully providing a teachable moment for somebody. This is a short sermon, so I apologize in advance for the brevity, but I guess it's necessary to get straight to the point at times. In the year 2011, my mother approached me in her home, and she said, "Max, I want you to take this life insurance policy. Now, this policy is going to pay off the house." I said, "Okay, Ma." She also told me that there was another life insurance policy in the cabinet, and that I was to take the proceeds of that policy and split it with my eldest brother. Again, I responded by saying, "Okay, Ma." I took the policy home and placed it in the safe. Fast forward to the year 2019, 8 years later. Mom experienced her first slip and fall accident. She was able somehow to get to the phone and dial 911. She told me about it later that day. So when she told me, what I did was I ordered 2 monitoring devices so that if it happened to her again, all she had to do was press the button. Press the button. The company would call me and send out EMS if necessary. The monitors resembled a wristwatch and a cell phone. And some of you probably know what happened next. My mother never wore those devices for the next few months. She wanted to be cool. She wanted to appear young, fresh, fly. Please turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 16. Book of Proverbs, chapter 16. Words of wisdom and wise sayings, have you? Proverbs chapter 16. Please focus on verse 18. Proverbs 16, verse 18. It reads, "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." That's right, church. Months later, in the month of August, it happened again. My mother fell. This time she fell while working. She happened to be working at the public place that many around the world know as the Louisiana Superdome. When she fell, she hit her head. She was treated, and she continued to work her shift after she was treated. When it was time to go home, she gave me a call, told me about it, brushed it off. A month later, I went to her house one Sunday morning to bring her to work at this same Superdome. Usually when I pick my mother up, I don't have to go inside. All I have to do is back the car up, and here she comes, popping out. Just wait for a minute or two. This time she never came out. So what I did was I let myself in the house. And I discovered my mother on the floor, calling out to me. After she called me to the room where she was, I went in and I helped her up. She went in the bathroom, took a shower, told me she wasn't feeling so well. And she told me she was laying on that floor all night long, trying to get up. All night long. So I brought her to a hospital where she stayed for a few days. And after about 2 weeks, she felt better, but she always had trouble getting in and out of the bed. And to answer your question, no, she wasn't wearing that monitor. Nope, not at all. Not at all. Then we fast forward towards the end of the month of October, after the Feast of Tabernacles. I went and checked on Mom as I regularly do. She told me that she wasn't feeling well. She showed me how swollen her ankle was. I said, okay, Mom, let's go to the hospital. Went to the hospital. Doctors treated her. They said that her diabetes had progressed because she stopped taking her medication. She felt like over a period of time it wasn't doing her any good anyway, so she just stopped taking it. And that the swollen ankle was actually something called deep vein thrombosis, also known as a blood clot that could travel to her heart. They prescribed medication for Mom, and they scheduled for her to have rehab done. Folks would come to the house and treat her. They would release her from the hospital about 4 days later. From that point on, I would check on her twice a day. Before work, after work, before work, after work. In the evenings, I would feed her, give her medication. We would watch television together. She would tell me about her day and about all the TV shows that she watched. NCIS Los Angeles, Chicago PD, and Law and Order. Yep, Law and Order. She liked to know how criminals think so that she could be 1 or 2 steps ahead of them, see. That Saturday evening in early November, we sat down and we watched television again. This time, church, she fed herself. Took her medication without help. It's like, all right. I said to myself, she's getting better already. And rehab starts in 2 days. I'm feeling good. Please turn to Psalm 39. Psalm 39. Psalm 39. Psalm 39 is known as a psalm of lament, as it represents a prayer or cry out to God because of distress. Psalm 39, verse 4 says, Eternal, make me to know my end and the measure of my days, what it is that I may know how frail I am. How frail I am. As you all know, on the following day, when I went back to the house, I discovered Mom had expired in her bedroom. After I contacted the emergency dispatch office, I started calling family members, as I thought a responsible son should do. And after I made phone calls, I just sat there thinking about planning for a funeral, Please turn to Proverbs 19. Proverbs 19. Proverbs chapter 19. I want you to focus on verse 20. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 20. It reads, Hear counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter end. There are many devices in a man's heart, many plans, many purposes in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the eternal, that shall stand. It doesn't matter what our plans may be, what we think we're going to do tomorrow, next week, what have you. At the end of the day, it is God's counsel, it is God's purposes which shall stand, and there's nothing that man's plans or purposes can do about that. Man has all sorts of plans and desires and purposes, but it will never thwart God's counsel. While I was sitting there thinking about planning for a funeral, I received a phone call from a loved one that I had just got off the phone with. The loved one wanted to know what was going to happen to my mother's home. And so I sat there and I said, "Say what?" And so they emphatically asked the question again, what's going to happen to Mom's home? And so as I continued to pause, recognizing that Mom's body is still in the bedroom, and that these individuals did not call to offer assistance. They didn't call to say, Max, is there anything I could do to help? Is there any comfort you need? All their minds seemed to have been on was what's going to happen to that huge material thing owned by my mother. And so I thought, man, this is incredible. But church, I want you to know something. You'd have been proud of me. Yeah, you'd have been proud of me. You know why? Guess what I did, church? I held my peace. Yes, I held my peace, church. I didn't go off. I calmly explained to the loved one what's going to happen to Mom's house. Yeah. The next day, I called the insurance company to file a claim. Company told me that the insurance policy had lapsed. That's what I said too. I thought that was worth a good chuckle. I said, all right, no problem at all. I'm gonna call the second insurance company. Yeah. Insurance company told me that policy lapsed. I'm like, oh, okay, we're on the road here. I looked around my mother's house and I saw that Mom had completed applications for 2 more life insurance policies. Okay. Well, one of those policies was about 3 months before her departure. All right, let me call these companies, see what's going on, trying to be dutiful. Those policies had lapsed as well. So I'm wondering, how am I going to finance a funeral? I'm getting phone calls from my colleagues at work wanting to send flowers, location. Hey, let us know we could send our condolences, sympathetic gestures. Church members are asking me where the funeral is going to be. And it's 4 days later. I had not a clue what's going to happen. Had no idea how this was going to work out. Please turn to Proverbs chapter 22. Proverbs chapter 22. Verse 7 says, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." I don't care how you slice it. That's not going to change. The borrower is servant to the lender. I looked at paperwork that was lying around my mother's home, and I discovered that 7 months earlier, in April of 2019, the mortgage company had threatened to repossess my mother's home. Mom never said a word. In July, 3 months later, Mom visited a lawyer to file for bankruptcy. Never said a word. Didn't tell me anything. Interacting with me, calling me on a daily basis, checking on me, how I'm doing. Mom, how you doing? Hey, no. 3 months later, in October, the bankruptcy judge approved the bankruptcy filing. Again, not a word. She didn't tell me a thing. Didn't tell my oldest brother anything. All the time we spent together, going to the grocery stores, cleaning up around the house, watching television. But looking back, church, I really didn't need my mother to tell me about those times that she had enjoying those TV shows. What I really needed her to tell me was that she needed help. She was struggling. Now, I know what she would have said. She would have said, son, I didn't want to bother you with all that. But because she didn't tell me, it's more of a burden today. Because believe it or not, church, I am still attempting to settle the affairs of my mother 4 months after her departure. Things are made more difficult. Like many people, my mother carried a heavy burden in dealing with the issues of this life. In 1 Samuel chapter 30, David seemed to be overwhelmed with this thing called anguish. 1 Samuel chapter 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30. We're going to begin at verse 1. 1 Samuel chapter 30. And it reads, And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the 3rd day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, this place, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it, the city, with fire. Ziklag is a Hebrew name which means winding or bending. And I guess it's a description of the topography of the area. It was controlled at that time by the Philistines, but the king had given the town of Ziklag to David. And it was located 25 miles southwest of another Philistine city known as Gath. Okay? Verse 2. After they burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein, they slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away, and went on their way. So the people were kidnapped. You don't have to turn there, but in chapter 27, the king of Gath had originally given the town of Ziklag, as I previously stated, to David as a reward for defeating the Amalekites. The Amalekites, as we're reading here, retaliated against David by kidnapping all of the women and people in the land, and then they burned the city with fire. So this is what we're reading here. Verse 3. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives, kidnapped. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power or energy to weep. And David's 2 wives were taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul or the lives of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. David was distressed and in anguish because of the kidnappings of his 2 wives, and as you just read, because the people wanted to kill him, because they all felt it was David's fault that the city was left defenseless, while he agreed to go along to a place called Jezreel, along with the king of Gath. The term distressed, as you read in verse 6, means anguish, anxiety, trouble. And it's another word for stress. Sometimes stress is pushed upon us without warning. Sometimes we cause our own stress. Most of us live under stressful conditions in school, in our jobs, in our various relationships with people, and the everyday hustle and bustle of life. Increasing taxes and rising crime are just the tip of the iceberg that elevates stress. I believe that stress contributed to my own mother's death. She was forced out of her first home over 10 years ago, which was a much more affordable home because of eminent domain. The city and state decided that they wanted to put a hospital in the area, so they told her she had to go. And because of the amount of money that they gave her, what she did was she said, there's certain parts of the city I don't want to move to because she didn't feel comfortable. So she decided to purchase a home in what she thought was a much safer area, but church, she couldn't afford it. She couldn't afford it. My mother acknowledged that she was high maintenance, but she never would share her financial troubles. In the 3rd chapter of the book of James, if you would turn there, there's a lesson involving the tongue and how such a small member of the body can cause great damage. James chapter 3. Those subjects are included in the chapter, but we're not going to read about the tongue. James chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 13. James chapter 3, verse 13. It reads, "Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if you have," verse 14, "bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descends not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish." Chapter 3, verse 16 says, "For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work." While it wasn't at the level of Cain and Abel, and while it wasn't at the level of Absalom and Amnon, David's children, my mother and her siblings did not get along. There was strife. Because of the strife, because of the lack of communication between the parties, I had no way of reaching my aunt and uncle in time for the funeral. Had no idea where either of them lived, even though they both lived in the city. Had no idea. No phone numbers. The old house where they lived, went to visit numerous occasions. No one was there. So they didn't make it to the funeral. Many centuries ago, the nation of Judah was about to be invaded by the Assyrian army. God delivered Judah from that particular enemy who wanted to destroy the nation of Judah and just ransack the entire country. But after God provided the victory, church, the liberty and the joy that was celebrated and experienced by the king of Judah seemed to be short-lived. The king of Judah became gravely ill, and the sickness was so severe that God sent him a message. Please turn to Isaiah chapter 38. Isaiah chapter 38. Isaiah chapter 38. Still see pages turning, so I'll just wait a moment. I'll pause that. Verse 1 says, "In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came unto him and said unto him, Thus saith the Eternal, Set thine house in order, for you shall die and not live. You shall die and not live." Death, mortality, even though we know it's coming, we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to discuss our own mortality. We avoid such discussions. Some of us don't do well preparing for it. As a society, we do not heed God's warning to set our houses in order. Setting our houses in order means that we need to have serious discussions with our closest loved ones as to how our estates should be settled. We have to tell them such things as where the last will and testament is, where are the life insurance policies, if there are any, where the cemetery plots are, if there are any. If you don't have any of that, you should say so. Hey, don't have it. That makes life easier. We know what to do. We know what to prepare for. Don't leave your loved ones guessing. Don't leave them scrambling, trying to figure things out. Now, when you have this conversation, you don't have to be entirely serious about the conversation. Let me give you an example. All right, family. Step right up, step right up. I want you to come into the room, okay? I want you to gather around for a minute. Okay, is everybody in the room? Good, 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 good. Okay, now, take a good look. Take a good look at me. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, he's gorgeous. Oh, he's suave and debonair. I know. You don't have to hold back. However, I want you to understand that Mr. Suave and Debonair is not going to be around forever. No. He's not going to be around. Now, it's going to come a time when I'm going to have to leave this cruel world. I'm going to have to exit the land of the living. I'm not going to be around. So when that happens, I want you to bury me in such and such a suit. Look, I got the suit right here for you, family. All you have to do, this is the suit, okay? The life insurance policy is located in this particular place. Safe, paperwork. Show them where the paperwork is. Cemetery plots are right there, along with the applicable phone numbers. It's right in the safe, or wherever you would have it to be. Now let me tell you about my service. I just want to have a brief visitation and a graveside service. Okay, that's all. Nothing hard. Make it quick. Now, if funds get too tight for you, no problem, no problem. Hey, graveside service. I want burial, man. I want burial. Okay? Quick graveside service. And I want you to enjoy the rest of your lives. And one more thing. If I hear that you guys are fighting over my stuff, I will come out this grave and I will wear you out. See, don't have to be entirely serious. Let them know. That's the important thing, letting your loved ones know. Please turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The preacher, Solomon, deals with the subject of oppression in this chapter, as well as the vanity of selfish toil. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. We're going to begin at verse 9. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9. And it reads, 2 are better than 1. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. You can put their goods together. Verse 10, for if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falls, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? Just makes it all the more harder. And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. It was hard over the past year to watch such a proud, independent woman suddenly become dependent. Health declining gradually over time. Value your loved ones while you have them around. Appreciate the good times and the family gatherings that you have with them, that you're experiencing with them, as limited or as how great as they may be. Whether you're 25 years old or 75 years old, whether you're 30 or whether you're 80, have the difficult conversation with your loved ones and leave the instructions in a secure location, easily accessible to them, so that they'll know how to settle your affairs. There's a scripture that says, let all things be done decently and in order. Those things include the difficult discussion. Have the hard conversation is the title of this message.